really important that we begin to change the mindset of young people to know that your vote counts.
They don't understand that the legislative arm of government is actually a co-equal arm of government.
We have an incredible amount of potential.
Whatever it is I was doing, because of my personal DNA, it had to be of an international standard.
Which is what, seriously speaking, is all about. This is Seriously Speaking. My name is Adesuwa. Today, because of the development in technology nowadays, we're going to be having a Google Hangout with the person who was the immediate past, at least as at today, the immediate past Minister for Communication and Technology. A personal friend, a female, and I'm very proud of her achievements on that seat in the number of years she had been there. The developments are immeasurable. Because today, but the problems still remain. I have an audience, live audience in the house, and it's not a surprise that they are mostly young girls who are aspiring to be as successful as she is. But we have industry experts waiting to have the Google Hangout with us. The person I'm speaking with today is Omobola Johnson, Mrs., an engineer by training, and until recently, the Minister for Communication Technology. We'll take a break and we'll return to the studios on this edition of Seriously Speaking.
Omobola Johnson is a management consultant turned technocrat who is the first and immediate past Minister of Communication Technology. Omobola is a graduate of the University of Manchester and King's College, London, with a PhD from Cranfield University. Mrs. Johnson was the one-time country managing partner with Accenture, having worked there for over 25 years. She is the founding chairperson and member of the Board of Trustees of Women in Management, Business and Public Service, WIMBIS, a non-governmental organization that seeks to improve the success rate of female entrepreneurs and increase the proportion of women in senior management positions. Omobola, while a Minister of Communication Technology, revolutionized the communication technology industry in Nigeria with several of our capacity and research development initiatives. Today, Omobola looks to the future with more dreams, and we'll be sharing more on this and the legacy she hopes to leave.
Yes, my guest, as you've already seen in that little documentary, is Omobola Johnson. It's nice to have you on this set. We've tried several times to get this done. It had to happen this time.
I know we have, yes, and I'm so glad it happened finally.
At last. Well, you know, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, first of all, can we all just say hello, my audience? Because it's important. I mean, what does it make you feel like when you see young girls who are interested in technology?
It's very exciting because this is one thing that we started in the ministry and a number of other people are doing this before us.
Yes.
It is so important for us to get young girls interested in ICTs, in science and technology, because it's an area that traditionally, culturally, they shy away from. And the way the world is going, that's where most of the opportunities are going to be. So we need to get them, catch them young and really get them interested. So it's great to see all these young girls.
What was that program that you launched to try and catch these young girls young?
It was the Digital Girls Club, which we did in collaboration with WTech and Witten, Ore, and Martha. Basically what it was, we developed a curriculum for young girls in secondary schools, GS1 to SS2, I think it was. But basically it was just a fun curriculum. It was an extra co-curricular class. They would go into the computer lab in their schools, they would learn about computers, they learn how to program, they'll learn how to assemble, disassemble and put computers together again. And it was just fantastic. The response has been wonderful. It really has catalyzed that interest in ICTs. We're going to be following the girls. Hopefully they will decide to have careers, not just in computer science or software engineering, but it could be in medicine, it could be in chemical engineering, just to get more girls into sciences. I mean, my passion is really around ICTs, but I think just introducing them to computers where they typically wouldn't have had that introduction is really what is really very important.
Well, tell me though, that many years ago now, more than 30 years ago, you went to study electrical engineering. Was that odd?
It was 30 years ago, yes. Remind me of how old I am, but it was about 30 years ago. It was odd. I was one in, there were about 100 100 students in my class, and there were just about 5 girls. Now, interestingly, my daughter studied chemical engineering at the same university, and she was also 5 in a class of about 80 to 100. So, not much has changed, unfortunately. And so that's why it's so important for us to have the kind of programs that we're working on. It's the Digital Girls Clubs, there's the 1,000 Girls in ICT Jobs, to get more girls interested, because like I said, ICTs, technology is the future, and we must ensure that we are not excluded or deliberately disempowered for participating in this very important sector of the economy.
Interestingly, in your time as minister, Did you notice, I mean, it appears that more youngsters are more interested in doing careers in entertainment, arts. There's even, I'm sure, if there were 100 students in an engineering class 30 years ago, maybe they're now 50. There's a reduction, not only from the girls, you know.
Well, there is actually a reduction, and that's because people see that maybe the entertainment and is really where things are happening. But when you look at that industry itself, it's an industry that is very technology-driven. Digital media, the cameras, production, everything is around technology. So you can't just, after a while, you know, if you're a musician, for instance, if you look at the career of most of the musicians, they move from singing and performing on stage, they move into production, they move into development, and you must have a knowledge of ICTs, and that's what I always tell people. So the thing about ICTs is that it actually cuts across almost every single industry. When you look at even our GDP, we say ICT contributes about 9.6% of GDP, but then it actually contributes another 2.5% because it contributes to financial services. Think of banking, you can't think about technology. Look at agriculture, look at manufacturing. So ICTs are really, they cut across everything. So even though people are moving away from sciences, there has to be a deliberate effort by government, and there is by the, it's what is called science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's STEM. There's a huge movement around that. It's not just Nigeria. It's all over the world. We need to get more people into these fields because the way the world is going, we need more technicians, more engineers, more of these science-based people to help us move forward.
Tell me, when you were approached, because we first find out from you that we're thinking of making you minister, what did you think? Because you've been in the private sector all these years. I mean, you were head of Accenture at the last count, and then they suddenly say, come and. Were you worried?
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction was, no way. There's no way I'm going into government. But, you know, I spoke to a few people that I was close to, you know, my husband, my late father, a few people that had left private sector to go to government. And their response to me was the same. In fact, the best response I got was from my predecessor, Dr. Sulaiman, who was MD of Accenture before me.
Yeah.
And he says to me, you know, Mobola, you can't say no, so you have to say yes. And I thought, what does that mean? But I think that was just a reaction from everybody. We sit here and we talk about government and how we're not making progress. And if we're approached, those in the private sector, we just have to step onto the plate and just do what
But there must have been a price to be paid for doing this.
Oh, there's a price to be paid. I mean, my family's in Lagos, so I had to move to Abuja. I'm a very private person. I lost all that privacy because once you're in government, you're literally in a fishbowl and everybody's talking about what you're doing and how you're not doing the right things. And, you know, you're just literally an open book for criticism. And so those are the kind of sacrifices and not really having the private, nice life that I had and being very much in the limelight and just having to leave my family in Lagos.
But if there's one thing that can be said, based on all the questions, I mean, all the questions we've received, you have made an impact. I mean, so when you were going to communications, did they pick that ministry for you, or you asked, okay, except, I mean, ICT worked?
Well, it's interesting because that was one of the things that I was concerned about, because the way the Nigerian system works, they just say, come and be a minister, and you're not told which portfolio. And so you just go there hoping that you know, and I really couldn't think of which portfolio. I knew it couldn't be finance because I wasn't, you know, I'm not a financial person. Couldn't be, I just really didn't know which portfolio it could be. And, you know, what then happened was that, you know, this was a new ministry that President Jonathan had created. And then the excitement, I started to get a little bit excited about it because there was no legacy. I had a clean sheet of paper to really decide around Mr. President had a vision, which he told me about, and then I could decide how we would achieve that vision. So from that point of view, it was very exciting. I don't know if it would have been so exciting if I'd been given another portfolio.
So what was that vision?
The vision was basically that he felt that ICTs could be used as a very powerful tool for inclusion. He had a vision for young people. This is an area that young people are naturally interested in. And he felt that, again, this ICT sector could be one that could create jobs. And that's really the two things that he talked about. It was inclusiveness and it was job creation.
And how did you achieve all of those things? Because, I mean, go ahead.
I think for job creation, when you look at the size of the sector now, while we don't have the empirical data yet, but we've created a number of jobs in that sector. But I think the more important one is the interest that we've created. Even in the 4 years since, in the 4 years that I was minister, an additional about $200 million came into the venture capital industry. And this is important because this is money that is going to young Nigerians, young software entrepreneurs that don't have the financial history to walk to a bank and take a loan. And they were getting these venture capital funds. And it's very important. They were creating businesses. If you look at businesses like Konga, like Waka Now, Deal Day, these are businesses that were created in the last 5 years.
Absolutely.
And they are employing thousands of people right now. If you look at the business process outsourcing, who are the call centers, again, employing thousands of people. So that was one part of it. The inclusiveness is one thing that we've done in terms of, you know, we talked about the gender, women in ICTs, girls in ICTs. bring in more people, but using ICT is more important. If you look at what Minister Adesuwa did with his e-wallet program, a lot of the beneficiaries of that program were women, because women are actually, they make a large part of the small-scale agricultural workforce. So giving them that fertilizers through a mobile phone, that's inclusion. You know, so that's the way that we're using
That was in
technology.
collaboration with your ministry.
It was, well, it was, because basically they needed the connectivity to get to the rural areas, and we did speak to them in terms of the platform and all of that, but it was very much their own initiative, but supported by us in terms of connectivity.
When people think about communication in Nigeria today, the first thing that comes to mind is a mobile phone. And when you think about your ministry, they're thinking about, why can't this woman make sure that our mobile phones work? You didn't wield such a strong stake with the NCC and people like that.
You know, it's one thing that I really spent a lot of time talking about, and creating the awareness with Nigerians that this is not just, there's a lot that, as somebody put it, when I make a phone call, you're sitting there, I'm sitting here. You know, I make a phone call, you pick up the phone. You know, it seems very simple, but you know, this phone call has traversed, you know, hundreds of miles of fiber and base station before it gets to you. And so my point is that the real bane of the Nigerian communications industry today is a lack of infrastructure, or not enough infrastructure. If you look at a country like Nigeria, we're a million square kilometers or thereabouts, 170 million people, we have today probably less than 100,000 kilometers of fiber and about 30,000 base stations. When you compare us to countries that are half the landmass of Nigeria, even a quarter of the landmass, they have even more infrastructure. So if your phone call doesn't go through, if your call gets dropped, it's because we don't have enough infrastructure. So our networks are partly congested. What we've been doing again.
Whose fault is it that would
well,
have
it's
Isn't the government's fault?
Without putting blame, that infrastructure is built in states. And really and truly, what has happened is that the ICT or telecoms industry has been seen very much as a cash cow. Or they're making so much money.
That's what we see.
So therefore, you know, not all true, but they're making so much money, it's an opportunity to tax them. So for instance, when a telecoms company puts up a base station, they've got to go through an environmental impact assessment that takes a year, because they've got to do it in the rainy and dry season, so that delays it. They've got to get permits to put up the base station from the local government and the state government. All of this takes time. And then what then happens is that these base stations are now taxed. They're what we call multiple taxes. So the state government comes along and says, oh, I see, you know, 1,000 base stations in my state. These guys are making so much money. You know, I'm going to charge Millionaire per base station. And they're the most incredible charges. Effluent fees, environmental fees, all kinds of fees are then levied on this single infrastructure by a number of state, state institutions. In fact, one state, there were 8 agencies of the state that were taxing this one single base station.
Wow.
So it makes it expensive, and it makes it difficult to roll out. So what we've been doing, or what we were doing then, was basically trying to make it easier for the telcos to roll out infrastructure in the states. And we had this Smart State initiative, where a state would sign up to say, I will give you, you know, for instance, okay, fiber optic is another thing we talk about. We need rights of way to lay fiber.
Lay those cables.
In some states, they were charging as much as 10 million, 5 to 10 million naira to lay fiber. So if you think of 100 kilometers of fiber, that's $1 billion naira without even doing anything. So there were states that signed up and said, look, we'll charge you the minimal amount for fiber, or even we'll waive the right to way fee like Cross River State did. We will charge you a certain amount on base stations, and that's what we're going to charge. And we'll make the approval process 30 days instead of 90 days. All those things really help to accelerate the process.
Did Cross River, for example, get an advantage of doing that? Did you have better service there or something?
Well, it is a process. So what I'll say is that I believe that if you go to Cross River State, if you go to Calabar, for instance, now, you'll probably get better voice services and better data services, because Calabar now has a metro fiber, where there's fiber that actually connects the whole of Calabar town. And so that's what's going to happen. So the state governments that are enlightened and that are interested in making their states digital states, they will sign up to this MOU and they will have better connectivity. And what will then happen is that when companies are coming to set up in Nigeria, they look, that's one of the first things they look at, power, bandwidth, telecoms. And so those states become much more competitive. And that's what we've been trying to sell to the state government.
One of the areas they talk about your ministry is the liberalization that you've been able to bring about in the telecom sector. I mean, it's one of the improvements in the rural telephony. But how far have we gone on that?
Quite far, actually. We did, in the early days of the ministry, we did with the Universal Service Provision Fund, we did a study, it's called an ICT Access Gap Study, to look at where are the areas of Nigeria where there is actually no connectivity or very little connectivity. And as we speak today, there are about 40 million Nigerians that don't have any connectivity at all. And so what we're doing with the USPF funds is actually to go to the rural areas, work in partnership with the telecoms companies and put base stations there. You know, I actually went to one of the base stations we commissioned, which was somewhere called Ibu Elidumare, which is...
Where is that?
It's actually in Ondo State. But, you know, at the Okebo Junction in Ondo State, you actually drive about an hour on a dirt road to get to this community. And the excitement, when they saw the base station, they could make telephone calls. And there's economic activity. As you drive down this dirt road, there are people that you can see the cocoa seeds being dried out in the sun. And you can imagine if they could telephone and get the price of cocoa, they would then make the journey. I mean, all kinds of things. And that's part of the inclusion strategy of Mr. President. But there was just so much that could be done by just putting the base station, and you increase the economic activity of that community. That's just one. We're putting up base station. We did about a couple of hundred in the time that I was there, but it's a program that's continuing, working with the telcos. Government doesn't own anything in those base stations. We just encourage the telcos to go to those rural areas and bring more Nigerians into this digital
create the
economy.
environment that makes it easy for them.
Absolutely,
You know,
correct,
okay.
yes.
Well, I'm hogging this conversation. I must take a break so that I can allow the Google Hangout to hold, and then we'll include our audience as we go by.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Omobola,
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Thanks,
Honorable Minister, before. We'll be right back if you don't go away. Yes, welcome back. We're ready with some people online already at the Google Hangout with the former Honorable Minister for Communication Technology. And hello, how are you?
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, you know, let's do it one after the other. What's your name, sir?
My name is Wale.
Okay, Wale, what are the questions that you have for the Honorable Commissioner?
Yes.
Why do I keep calling you Commissioner, for crying out loud? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Honorable Commissioner, Honorable Minister.
My audience is laughing. Go ahead.
Yes, it's nice to have you with us today. First of all, let me accept my appreciation and a very big thank you for all you've done as the ICT Minister over the past year.
I think I know this Wale.
Yes,
he's a guru. Wale, now I know why you're thanking her. This is our first communication technology is a telecoms guru.
Right,
Go ahead,
okay.
Wale.
Okay.
Oh, great. Yes, indeed. My question is this. Is there any sustainability plan that ensures that all the blueprint that you've laid down as a minister for ICT growth in Nigeria are not thrown into the trash can, by the incoming administration?
But you can go ahead and answer this.
It's a question that I keep getting asked. But the good thing about the ministry is that it's a liberalized industry, and so a lot of the work is done with the private sector. And the private sector has accepted these things as what is good for the private sector going forward. And so if any minister or administration comes along and tries to change these things, I expect the private sector to rise up and say, no, we like what was done before, the broadband plan, the local content plan, the girls in ICT, and so don't stop it. So I always throw it back to when I'm asked, is that you need to make sure that the next administration continues on what I think is actually a fantastic path for the progress and the development of the ICT sector. So it's up to you, Wale. You must make sure that the next minister, yes, continues with many of these policies. And the thing about it is
I agree with you, ma. But this also brings me to the second question.
I'm going to only allow 2 questions from you, Wale, by the way. I think I see Tunji, somebody called Tunji on the way, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, this borders on internet penetration. As we know, the cost of internet in Nigeria is still very high. And while some people will say government has no business regulating the cost of internet, but the truth is the market forces shape the internet.
Yeah.
And the responsibility of the government is also to provide that enabling infrastructure for internet. Now, how has government fared in the provision of that enabling infrastructure for internet towards a reduction of the cost of internet? Because the truth is we haven't seen any results in that aspect, to be quite honest.
No, when you say you haven't seen results, you have to be more specific.
Yeah, because I would actually disagree with you, Wale.
The cost of internet is still very much high.
Okay, I agree with that.
Yes.
I agree with that. It's high.
I agree that it is high, but I don't agree that you haven't seen anything. The cost of internet has actually been dropped by 50% between 2011 and 2015. Just go and check your numbers. Go and check how much you were paying for 1 gig of data in 2011 and how much you're paying for 1 gig of data in 2015.
Is that not because there's more competition?
Well, that's part of it. There's more competition,
Yes.
there's more infrastructure out there. So we have made progress. But I completely agree with you that it's not where it needs to be. It's still quite expensive when you look at the average income of a Nigerian. Now, in terms of what is government's responsibility, our responsibility is the enabling environment. Not so much to put that infrastructure in place, but to make sure that the taxes, the right of way, the permits, all that is required for the industry to lay this infrastructure, we take all the bottlenecks out of their way. And we've been doing that over the last 4 years. And I expect the next administration to do that because internet capacity, internet speeds is something that is important for any administration in any part of the world. So I think that you will continue to see drops in internet access prices and also better connectivity. Because we have enough fiber, as you well know. The undersea cables, 10 terabits per second, that's fine. It's just to get it inland that the challenge is. And we're seeing a lot more progress in these areas. And I believe that given the foundation that we've laid, I think that these prices will continue to come down and the access will get better.
But don't you worry, though, that maybe was there a change in government? Wouldn't that affect... Sorry, thank you very much, Wale. Maybe we should get Tunji online now. Tunji's been waiting. Okay, there Tunji is. Tunji, just give me a second to clear this question with the Honourable Minister. Past honourable. I keep having to say that. It's like you should be minister forever. It's true, but I'm sure you don't want to do that.
No. I'm back to Dr.
Yeah, back to the stock. Okay, I mean, doesn't the change in governance bother you as well? I mean, you were PDP government. Now we have an APC government.
Well, you see, I had the benefit during the campaign times, because, of course, we had to counter whatever APC was saying. And I had the benefit of looking at the APC manifesto. And ICT is there in the manifesto, unless they're going to change what they're doing. But ICT is there in the manifesto as a critical part of the economy going forward. I really don't believe that Nigerians... Today, we have about 80 million Nigerians that access the internet on a regular basis. I don't think Nigerians, given how vocal we've become, will accept for any government to stop anything that is going to get that internet access to be faster, cheaper, and better. I don't think Nigerians will accept.
That's what we want, faster, cheaper, better
Exactly.
internet.
No Nigerian will
Tunji,
accept.
thanks for joining us. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for having me. And I think I must thank the Minister for making time to be here.
Thank you.
And for, of course, taking our questions. I have one question that borders, I think, more on leadership than anything else. And I would like to ask the Minister, in your assessment of the quality of leadership that is available in Nigeria, particularly in the areas that's responsible for charting the strategic direction of communication technology in Nigeria. And I'm saying that from the point of view of what's available in government. Do you think that we have the depth that leadership, I think, demands to ensure that we become a major player?
In the ICT world?
Not just in terms of developing technology in Nigeria, but ultimately influencing what happens on a global scale.
Okay, this is almost political. Now, you spent 4 years in the political sphere, so you know how things work.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, it's very difficult to just put it in a silo of political leadership or leadership at the governance level, because leadership really happens at all levels. And I think, for me, the beauty of the ICT sector is that the true leadership of that sector comes from outside of government. Because when you look at the way the sector is growing, the telcos are, I mean, it is in their interest to build more infrastructure and to make more money than they're making right now. It is in their interest, despite what everybody thinks, to ensure that that quality of service is good, because they don't like being fined. I can tell you that for one. And then you look at the leadership in terms of the business leadership in the ICT sector. When I see companies, like all these e-commerce companies that we're seeing coming up today, when I see those kind of companies, I've met many of them one-on-one. I've seen the passion and the enthusiasm that they show. It's that leadership, because government really didn't have anything to do with that e-commerce sector. What we need to do to make it grow is to ensure that that internet connectivity is there and everybody can have access to all these different apps that are online. So, but when you talk about leadership from a point of view of where is Nigeria going as far as the ICT sector is concerned, that is already defined in a policy document, the ICT policy. It's a policy document that the APC could come and review. But again, the way that we have worked throughout my 4 years is direct involvement and participation with the industry.
And
So
there
this
was not a lot
policy-
of government interference in anything.
No. So this policy is developed really and truly by the private sector. So, you know, it's a difficult question to answer. It's almost like a trick question because we have issues, leadership gaps, capacity gaps, all across the sphere of our nation, whether it's business leadership, governance leadership, political leadership. There are problems. And if there weren't problems, we wouldn't be where we are today.
But there are problems and you still went in, so I'm glad that you did from the private sector because
I was
we
told
must
I didn't have a choice.
Okay, Viola, go on.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you to the Honorable Minister for gracing this wonderful and enlightening episode of Seriously Speaking. I only have one question, and it's borders on the cybercrime bill. It was passed late last year, passed into law late last year. And I would just like to know what promises does it hold for the country, and how is it currently being implemented?
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
He must be a young man worried about cybercrime.
Yes, it's actually very important for us here. A point of correction, it was passed by the Senate, but not passed by the House. Unfortunately, we couldn't achieve that before we left. So it's not
still
actually
hanging.
a law. Yeah, it's hanging, which was really unfortunate. One
What
of
were
things
the
that we
issues?
didn't achieve. Well, I'm not quite sure. It was still being read and debated. I don't know. I really don't know what the issues were.
Okay.
But what you can expect, let me try and what the cybercrime bill was trying to accomplish was the fact that, you know, there are a lot of crimes that are committed on the internet. And we have no law. And really, a crime that is committed offline or online is a crime. And we had no law that would punish perpetrators of crime online. So what we can expect is that there are specific kinds of crimes. Any crime that is committed online, there is a consequence, whether it's a jail term or a fine or whatever it is. And that bill actually defined what the consequences were. In terms of protecting citizens' rights online, there's a little bit of that in the cybercrime bill. But quite important, one of the sections of the cybercrime bill is what we were talking about earlier, which is protection of ICT infrastructure, which it now classified as critical national infrastructure. Because before the bill, there was only things like the power lines and water, dams, and all those kind of things are critical infrastructure. And now, all our ICT infrastructure, such as, or when the bill is passed into law, things like the base stations, fiber, radios, all of that is called critical national infrastructure because we're becoming so IT dependent. So if you go, and what happens is that touts will come, local governments will come, they will go and switch off a base station and you shut down, you know, connectivity for hundreds of thousands of Nigerians. So right now, if you tamper with ICT assets, it's actually a death penalty.
Like you're liable.
You're liable. So
Viola must be a lawyer. Why is he asking that question? I suspect you're a lawyer.
Because there are many crimes that are actually committed online. And it really is getting, the poor girl that passed on, the BlackBerry, she was selling goods online. She went to a hotel.
Oh, okay, that's true. That's true. So
Cynthia.
can that pass on as a cybercrime?
It's a cybercrime.
Okay, the young girl that was murdered
Yes, Cynthia, I
in
can't
the
remember
hotel
her
room.
surname,
Okay, do
yeah.
we have somebody else online? Leke. Hi, Leke.
So it's a quick question.
Go ahead.
Why are .ng domains so expensive?
Why are .ng?
Yeah.
Leke.
Again, yes. Thank you, Leke. Why is .ng still expensive?
So
Yes.
expensive.
Yes.
Well, first of all, the price has come down.
No, why was it expensive in the first place?
Well, I think, you know, NIRA is the registration authority. They were just starting. They felt they could make a bit of money out of this. They needed the money to keep the institution going and all of that. But I think they began to realize, you know, the fact that we needed more Nigerians on the .ng, which means that it's locally hosted. When you go on the internet, if it's a .ng website, you don't have to go to wherever it is and come back and all of that. And it gives us an identity on the internet, a national identity, which is a very good thing, by the way. It has come down. I think it's not only about 1,500 naira per annum to have a .ng domain name. So we're bringing the price down. But I must say that we have actually, that .ng name is actually very valuable. We've sold it, yeah, because you see, for instance, because a number of things end in ng. Catering, dancing, and all that. So we sold that .ng name to companies outside of Nigeria because it's a very nice
ending.
You know? It's a very nice ending. But we're working on it. You know, we work very closely with NIRA and the leadership team there to see how we can bring it down. But it actually has come down. It's 1,500 naira. I know it's just like $1 or almost free outside of Nigeria. But again, because it just costs us so much more to maintain the infrastructure and all of that. But that price will keep coming down because there's a big campaign that we're running, which is moving to .ng. It's something that government did. We had that move to .gov.ng, so all our websites are hosted on .ng domain name. So it's something that it's a work in process. But I do agree with you that, price is coming down. It's not what it should be. But what would you like it to be? I think that's
exactly. That's a good one.
It's
Throw it back at you.
Naira. How much
what
would you like it to be before it's cheap enough?
Well, the last time I registered it was 15,000 naira.
15,000?
So 1,500 is news to me.
No, it's not 15,000 naira anymore. I can assure you of that. It's come down significantly.
So please, if you find out it's 15,000 naira, please reach me and I'll reach her. I'll reach the ministry.
And I will
to debunk them.
For sure.
To debunk them. Yeah. Thank you, Leke, for joining us. Okay, Mr. Ola, do you want to add a thing or two to what we're discussing here today? Welcome. Maybe Mr. Ola just wants to be, he just wants to view the communication. He doesn't want to say anything. I don't think he wants to say anything. But hello, Mr. Ola.
Hello.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, very much.
Okay, do you want to contribute to the discussion today?
Contribute? Well, my boss is sitting there and I think she's saying it all.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
It's one of my essays.
Oh, okay, really?
I think it's
So it works. And where are you right now? Abuja or where are you?
He's in Abuja.
I'm in Lagos now.
Oh, he's in Lagos.
Okay, in Lagos. So it's technology we're seeing at work. Okay, so we'll let you go. You're not going to say anything different anyway, Mr. Ola. So thank you.
No.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us. Yes, thank you. I don't know how you found out though, but thank you for joining us. I mean, when people think about ICT, before I round up, okay, now I think this is Wale. If you have a last question, I'll come back to you. Is this the Wale that started at the beginning? Just a minute. Let me ask the minister this question that will take you as a final question, and then we'll round up this session. Ultima Studios has proven to us that their systems work here. So somebody had sent us this question or observation that since the initial push in the early 2000s, when the big telecom and IT giants rushed in to take advantage of the large markets, we are yet to see any other major milestone. Instead, what we have are situations where foreign investors are frustrated out of the country due to the ridiculous amount of corruption shoved down their throat by government officials. Is that true? I mean, you were in government for 4 years, and this corruption we talk about, was it really that?
Look, corruption, it's real and it's there. I don't think anybody can deny that. It's real and it's there. And it really does hamper progress, it hampers investments, it hampers development, which is why every government will come and talk about anti-corruption programs and policies and institutions. But it really is very deeply entrenched. But, my view could be controversial. I'm not a minister anymore, so maybe I can say this. But my view is that I think if Nigerians are looking for this utopia of no corruption, I think it's going to be very tough. I think what we need to do is ensure that the corruption that really does the most damage in terms of, taking money directly out of the mouths of people, money that could go into health and education and all of that. And that's the really big type of corruption that really you can actually fight. There's a little corruption that I think that will be institutional corruption. I think that's what we really must face and fight, and I would encourage the APC government to do that. And that's what they've said they're going to do. So that's their, security and corruption, But there's just going to be that.
Is it going to be difficult for them? I mean,
it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because this is corruption that is entrenched and established. And you're dealing with people that are very powerful and very influential because these are not people that are walking on the streets. This is very serious. It's a very serious issue, and the APC must tackle it head on and really address it, So, but in the sense that, I was reading an article once. It says, money doesn't care where it goes. It'll go into any hellhole, any sinkhole, as long as there's money to be made. Not that Nigeria is a hellhole. That's not what I mean. But it's funny. But even, while we have corruption, we're still getting significant amounts of FDI, foreign direct investment.
But before I round up this section, I just want you to answer one question. Is it true that officials of communication industry are bribed by all these telecoms companies?
Well, I don't think it is true. People think so and they say so.
Yes.
But I work directly with NCC. I work with NISTO, who regulates the IT industry. I would say no, because there are many things that telecoms companies would like to do and they're not allowed to do, and they come and complain to me. And I know that if they're given enough money to somebody somewhere, they would have been able to do it. Yeah. So I think that NCC, quite honestly, is run as a fairly professional organization. And I think it's just people just think that because quality of service is so bad, they must be giving them money to get away with a lot of these things. But there are a lot of underlying issues that NCC has no control over, and so I don't think so, quite honestly.
Thank you, ma'am. Wale, I'm sorry. I'm not sure I can take any more questions from you. Maybe.
One question.
Okay, one. Quickly, very quickly. My director said, just very quickly. Just quickly, Wale.
Yes. What would the minister consider her major legacy to the communication technology sector that she would want to continue in the next government?
Thank you, Wale, and thank you. I'm going to let you answer that question when I return. I must take a break. That will be where we start, actually. The legacy is the last section of this. Thank you. Thank you for being part of the Google Hangout. I know you are used to it. Thank you, Wale. See you. And for all those who joined us, we want to thank you for joining us. But I must take a break, and I return so that my ex-minister can engage with my young audience here who've been waiting very patiently. Don't go away. Well, thank you very much, my able audience. I mean, that sounds very much like school's debate. But these are young people who are excited about the fact that they're in the studio live with the former Minister for Communication Technology. And after our Google Hangout, the last question we got was from Wale, who was interested in knowing what Mrs. Johnson's legacy would be. And I'm interested too. Are you guys interested in knowing what her legacy would be? Yes, of course. What would be your legacy?
I hate that question.
Okay. I know one legacy that nobody can take away, that you were the first ever communications.
Absolutely.
Nobody can take that away from
me,
you.
the pioneer minister.
Yes.
It's very difficult to say what my legacy is, because I think it's only going to be after, when I'm old and grey, and I then look back at the industry and say, oh, actually, I laid the foundation, or,
What would you like it to be?
I think I would like it to be the fact that Nigerians now realize how important the ICT sector is. And I think that has happened. Mm-hmm. The fact that ICT is actually a means of making money, of creating jobs. A lot of more Nigerians. I think the legacy I'd like to leave, and maybe I should answer that question, is if our e-commerce and venture capital industry actually became one of the biggest in Africa and potentially the world.
But it has a potential.
It has a potential. We've sown the seeds right now. We see venture capital funds starting up. We see a lot of young Nigerians developing applications, building software. And if I can look back in 10 years' time and see an industry that is attracting tens of billions of dollars, apart from the, instead of the 200 or 300 million we're doing right now, then I think that would be, I'll be very, very happy. I'll die a happy woman.
There was an natural young man recently, Nigerian, who sold his app for $1 billion.
Absolutely.
That should happen here.
Exactly. He's based in Silicon Valley, so, he's Nigerian, so we can take the credit for it.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice if, if some of the e-commerce companies that we see today IPO'd or went to the stock market and they were worth billions of naira.
Wow.
And I would know that, yes, we started that.
It was worth it. So at this point, I would like to bring in the audience. And I did invite the young girls from WTech who have had opportunities to interact with WTech, simply because you're female. I'm female. And I want to encourage that industry as well. I mean, there's no harm about it. I have a few men in the hall, but I've kept these young people waiting for all this while. So I want to give you the opportunity to ask whatever question that you want or make whatever comment that you want now that she's here before you. So I'm going to start with you, right? You just tell us your name and what you do. Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. My name is Enito. My question is on online mapping. That's like the Google map we have that helps us locate wherever we're going to. And I know that most cities in Nigeria and the communities are not online. That they are not on the map, we're not being mapped. So what's the ministry doing to help us and just to ensure that all these cities come online so that we could locate whatever, the joy of maybe going to Ibadan. I've not been there before and I need to look for a street. I don't need to stop and ask somebody. I could just go on Google and then I could get my direction through GPRS.
Okay, that's got to do with connectivity, isn't it?
Well, not quite. It's got to do with what
Thank you, Enito.
Thank you, Enito. It's what they call geographic information systems, and that's what actually maps out all the roads and the terrain and everything. Now, so they're actually, I think Lagos is actually well mapped. So you can actually, if you go on Google Maps, you can actually get to almost anywhere in Lagos. And I think Abuja is properly mapped as well. There are a number of other cities. But what is happening is that the state governments are actually doing GIS maps of their whole states. So I know Ondo State, Cross River State, a couple of states in the northern part of the country have actually mapped their countries. And once that is done, then it's something that Google Maps can pick up. So again, it's work in progress as we move to a digital economy. But I would think that, I'm not 100% sure, but many cities are actually quite well mapped. I remember traveling from Abuja to Minna, and we actually did it on Google Maps all the way. So there are parts of the country that are very well mapped, but it's not mapped to the detail of every street, and because, Nigeria itself is not properly mapped, and moves us to the postal system. Because right now, delivering post is a problem because not every single building has an address.
No, but that becomes a challenge. Is it for the federal government or for state governments to ensure
It's actually state governments. State governments and local governments. So we need municipal governments that actually work properly because a lot of this mapping and addressing is actually the responsibility, constitutional responsibility of the local government.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if we have any more questions from people in the audience. So what's your question, my dear? Give us your name and give us the question.
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. My name is Iyimide Martins.
Iyimide? What does Iyimide want to be when she grows up?
A computer software engineer.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Excellent. So I hope you are going... We're going to have a Silicon Valley in Nigeria soon.
We are.
Computer village.
No. It's actually, I'll tell you that later.
Okay, we'll talk about Silicon Valley, Nigeria Silicon Valley. Go ahead,
okay. My question is, the challenges you faced as being a minister, what were they? And, how was it?
Do you plan to be a minister someday?
Yes.
That's interesting. What challenges that you faced?
That's a great question.
Yes.
I think for me, the biggest challenge I faced was maybe what I'd call the culture shock, coming from private sector.
Organized private sector.
Yes, organized private sector, very structured organization, and coming into the civil service, where, not that it's not structured.
You had never been a civil servant,
Never been a civil servant. Not that it's not structured, but it's much more bureaucratic than what I was used to. So just getting things done. You had to minutes of things and it would go down and it would take ages for it to come back up. So that's the speed and efficiency that I was used to was something that was one of the biggest challenges. But then, to be honest, I realized that bureaucracy was actually quite important. So bureaucracy, when you say bureaucracy, it's not actually a bad thing. Because sometimes when you're in government, you must document every single thing that you do and have an audit trail. So that's one. So that was a big challenge. I'm working with, in a sense, a civil service, as you all know, that didn't quite have the kind of capacity that you needed. And that really and truly wasn't as IT savvy as I would like to have.
Absolutely. Did you have to start training people?
You had to start training people. You had to start, for instance, in the ministry, I insisted that every single director, assistant director, they must have an email address. If you want to contact, if you want to send me an email, it must be on .gov.ng. So we tried quite a lot of things. So that was one challenge. I think the other challenge is, when you're used to being in the private sector and you're doing your own thing, I think just being out there and getting used to being criticized and not taking it personally. That people, it's not that they hate you, but they're just criticizing because freedom of speech and all of that. I think the challenge was really getting the word out. We weren't very good at that, I would say. Not only my ministry, I think generally, we weren't very good at telling Nigerians what you were doing. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges, was how do we communicate? How do we tell stakeholders?
You were busy doing.
We're busy doing. And I guess that's one thing that if there's a regret or a challenge that I think I didn't address properly, it was really getting that communication going and having more of these kind of things with Google Hangouts. I did last year, I did a Twitter Hangout, which is even more difficult than this, where you're trying to answer on Twitter. But that really helped, and people really began to understand what we're doing. So I think that's another challenge.
I think I can take a couple more questions. Yes, sir.
My name is Innocent Anazio. I want to know, as the minister, what has your ministry done to reduce the call rate? We understand the fact that in Nigeria today we have the NCC, which is responsible for the regulation of the activities of these telecom industries. We are still faced with the problem of increased call rates, and not only that, we're also faced with the problem of low quality of calls. So what has your ministry done to address this problem? And also, talking about the problem of unsolicited SMS. These are some of the things that are actually bothering me.
Okay. People always reduce your ministry to telephone.
They do, but it's fine. I mean, it's one of the biggest parts of our job anyway. Again, in terms of the cost
call rate,
it's 11 kobo per second.
Yeah. Today. The cheapest.
So
some still have more than that.
Some still have more than that. But again, it's fallen by, I would say, 60% or so between 2011 and 2015. And like I mentioned earlier, even the internet connectivity. But we've tried very hard not to come in to regulate prices and let the market do that. Because it's competition that forces them to bring their prices down. So it's 11 calls per second. It's a promo. Definitely, but after a while, it becomes the standard for everybody. So that's what government has done. Text messages in 2011 was 15 naira. Today, it's 4 naira a minute. So we are making progress. I really must say that. But yes, I appreciate the fact that we want it to be cheaper and cheaper. If it could be free, I'm sure we'd be happy. But it's not good. But we're making progress in the right direction. That's that's what I would say. Your second question was around unsolicited. Yes, just before the administration ended, NCC has asked the telcos to install some kind of filtering technology in their systems to stop these unsolicited messages. It's been a long time coming, because I know people used to get very, very upset when you wake up, you're woken up by your phone just going on because text messages are coming in. So we started that process. The technology is now been, they have been mandated.
There's technology available for that?
There is, because it's spam. It's like where you get stupid emails on your on your email account. It's actually text spam, and there's a way to actually filter this text spam. So NC has mandated through a regulation that all the telcos must install this technology, and hopefully we'll get over that in the next, hopefully in the next few months. You know, quality of calls, I think we've gone through that.
Yes, we've got
it's you know, there's a direct correlation. Infrastructure, quality of service. We need to build that infrastructure, and I'll just keep saying, and I'll say it to the next minister, if there's any priority that you have, it's making sure we have good quality infrastructure in this country today. And that's really what's going to help us with the quality of service.
So I must say thank you for coming. I must round up, but the last question I would like to ask is, what was the most surprising thing that you found out in governance? And would you go back there?
The most surprising thing, actually, was that there are some very good civil servants. Because as I was going in, people said, be careful of them, they're wicked, they're evil, they will trip you up and everything, they're corrupt and everything. But you know, I met some really outstanding people in the civil service that were very committed to their work, very professional. And it's really, I would say, credit to them that we're able to do a lot of things that we're doing. So that surprised me, and it was a very nice surprise.
Would you go back?
No.
Maybe not now.
Not now, not yet.
But would you ever do politics, though?
Actually, maybe not, you know, go for political office. But I think right now I'm a lot more, because really of the campaign and how involved everybody was in the campaign, I think I'm a lot more politically aware than I was when I joined in 2011. And I think that when we get to 2019 or whatever it is, I think I'll be much more active. Not maybe as a politician, but in politics.
And helping people.
And making sure that we get the right kind of government. Even now, you know, I'm a card-carrying member of PDP. People don't realize that I had to be constitutionally. And so, you know, PDP is in opposition.
So you're going to resurrect PDP.
You know, we've got to get into the opposition and let APC know that, you know, heckling from the sidelines is very easy when you're out there. But it really is, from a very, jokes apart, from a very serious point of view, I think all of us must get involved in politics. One thing I said, just to very quickly, was that I was watching a documentary it was a film, a dramatization of the life of Aung San Suu Kyi, the Burmese, or Myanmar.
Myanmar, yeah.
And before her father was killed, there's one thing he said to her. He said, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. I think that's very profound. So you may say, well, I'm not a politician. You don't have to be a politician, but you've got to be interested and involved in the politics of your country. And that's what I'm taking away from government.
Thank you very much for being with us. I appreciate it. We did this, didn't we?
Yes,
after all.
After all.
And thank you for watching. I'm proud of her. I'm proud of any woman who's successful. In fact, I'm proud of any Nigerian who's doing things to help other Nigerians to be better. It's been Seriously Speaking. Thank you to my guests, especially the children from WTech. And thank you for watching. You at home. We'll see you again next week. That will be next quarter. Bye.